So, Ridley Scott's next big historical epic just finished filming, and it's due to be released early next year. The film will star Joaquin-Phoenix as Napoleon Bonaparte, depicting his rise to power through the lens of his volatile relationship with Empress Josephine. Now, the idea of a Napoleon biopic will no doubt tickle the pickle of a particular set of film fans, as this is famously the one project that arguably the greatest filmmaker of all time was unable to get made, the inimitable Stanley Kubrick. Not many people could claim to literally changing the trajectory of filmmaking as an art form, making movies that transcend the rigorous and painstaking planning and scheduling that it takes to make a feature film. On top of that, coming up with something to be evaluated and re-evaluated for all of time. Orson Welles made a film that became an encyclopedia of filmmaking techniques. You might have heard of it, and despite being so boring that it should be considered hazardous to your physical health, it is nevertheless a masterclass on everything filmmaking, from overlapping dialogue to rear view projection to extreme close-ups. It's just so rich with filmmaking lessons. One man who truly picked up everything that Orson Welles was throwing down was Stanley Kubrick, who would take the art of filmmaking to a whole new level, employing an insane level of detail to his art. Now, I'm not here to talk about his OCD or the incessant number of takes that he would make his actors perform, like the 95 times he made Tom Cruise walk through a door during Eyes Wide Shut, or the 127 times he made a woman do this.
I'm not gonna hurt you.
To the point that he literally broke Shelley Duvall's brain.
You know, damned if I do, damned if I don't. I mean, if I say I'm healthy, first thing they'll do is hurt me tonight. I love Robin.
I was sorry when he died.
But listen to what she says next.
I don't think he's dead.
Yeah, you don't think he's dead?
No.
Where do you think he is?
Shape-shifting.
Yeah.
He looks real good in some forms, in other forms he doesn't.
I'm also not here to talk about how people have discovered the secrets of the universe and the meaning of life within his movies. Jesus, there's a whole documentary which is just insane, people talking about how there's fucking recipes for vegan cupcakes hidden in Morse code within the clouds of the opening shots of The Shining, so I'll just leave that to those intellectual powerhouses. No, I'm here to talk about the film that Stanley Kubrick himself said would be the greatest film ever made. However, due to budgeting, the fact that Kubrick was Kubrick, and as well as factors beyond his control, the historical epic known as Stanley Kubrick's Napoleon will forever be the greatest film that was never made. After making a bunch of short films for a pittance, Stanley Kubrick signed on with United Artists for his first feature, 1956's The Killing. This successful start would see him take a step up for his next two films featuring bona fide star Kirk Douglas, Paths of Glory in 1959, followed by 1960's Spartacus. It would be during this time that Kubrick became disillusioned with the Hollywood process and America in general. I can't imagine why. He used this disillusion as motivation to move his life and his business permanently to England for some reason, but it was from here that he would be able to assert complete creative control over his films, while still enjoying the healthy Hollywood budgets that he was now accustomed to. This is where Kubrick became Kubrick as we know him today. His next two films being the Peter Sellers classics Lolita and Dr. Strangelove, the latter of which to this day is still regarded as one of the finest war satires ever made. It was his next release, however, that would go on to change the way people looked at films and the way that filmmakers looked at cinematography and design. 1968's 2001, A Space Odyssey. This film would net him his only Oscar for visual effects. And yeah, what am I meant to say about this that hasn't already been said? It's highly considered one of, if not the single greatest film ever made. And rightly so. It was during the post-production of 2001 that Kubrick first began working on Napoleon. He collected and read 276 books about the French Emperor, many of which are illuminated with asterisks, underlinings and notes like who assassinated Tsar Paul and how did the politics really work. He signaled the beacons and rounded up a group of researchers, which he then sent out to scout for any relevant material, sending them through France and Germany. Kubrick wanted to know everything from the colour of the soil on the battlefields to the meals eaten before every battle. It's safe to say that this pre-production and planning stage of the filmmaking process was where Kubrick was truly happy. He filtered all this through his megamind brain and came up with a 148-page screenplay, which followed the French Emperor from his birth in Corsica in 1769 to his death on the remote island of St. Helena in 1821. Kubrick was hell-bent on not making what he called a dusty historic pageant, but a painstakingly authentic evocation of life as it was lived in the 18th and 19th centuries. He wanted to leave the audience feeling as if they had watched a current affairs program. He hoped that the production would take considerably less time than 2001, telling a journalist that the exterior shooting, battles, location shots, etc. should be completed within 2 to 3 months. After that, the studio work shouldn't take more than another 3 months. The Romanian army had already committed to providing a maximum of 40,000 infantry and 10,000 cavalry for the production, which would have had a heavy focus on the many battles Napoleon engaged in, Kubrick describing these as vast lethal ballets. Despite the seemingly huge nature of the production budget, it initially didn't seem to be a problem, with many costumes being made on the cheap and Kubrick feeling that there wasn't really any need for any huge sets to be constructed, as he was planning on using real locations in France that were already authentically dressed. It's safe to say that Kubrick was pretty fucking excited about this film. He is quoted as saying that he thought it would be the best film ever made, and that up until that point there had never been a great historical film, and there had never been a good or accurate movie about Napoleon. Now, remember I mentioned budget? Well, Kubrick had indeed penned a deal with MGM. This was merely a pre-production deal, an agreement to write a script, make a plan, draft up a schedule, and estimate a budget. After 2 years of dedication and research, MGM decided not to proceed with the production. Partly because they were going through their casino phase and they weren't really interested in funding movies at the time, but mostly because if you're familiar with the history of film and film trends, then you know that shit is like waiting on a bus. Without fail, after a long wait, several show up at the same time. Armageddon came out at the same time as Deep Impact. Zodiac, The Curse of the Zodiac, and then The Zodiac all came out within a year. Olympus Has Fallen was competing in the cinema with White House Down. Dread is basically the same plot as The Raid. Turner and Hooch and K9. I mean, I could go on and on and on and on, but true to form, 1970 saw the release of the supremely fucking boring film Waterloo, casting doubt on how well another historical epic of the same ilk and time period and about a lot of the same fucking people would fare. It's almost hard to fathom that all this work, effort and research was done in the 3 years between the releases of 2001 A Space Odyssey and A Clockwork Orange. Two pillars of cinema. Based on all the reports and everything I've read up on Ridley Scott's new film, it seems as though it's going to follow the same focus on the battles and epic scenes of war, all seen through the lens of the tumultuous relationship between the two central characters. Ridley Scott is a master world builder if nothing else. Sure, his back catalogue is ropey of late, shall we say, but I'm sure it would be a good, watchable, historical epic financed by Apple TV. It's just probably not going to be the greatest movie ever made.